Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen your mom's eyes or your dad's smile looking right back at you? It's pretty wild, right? We get all these traits from our parents, but we're never just a carbon copy. So how does that work? Well, today, we're going to dive into this incredible puzzle of heredity and figure out exactly how life's code gets passed down. All right, first up, a little experiment for you. Right now, I want you to feel the bottom of your ear. Is your earlobe kind of dangling free, or is it attached straight to the side of your head? It's a simple little thing, but this trait is a perfect example of what's passed down through your family, and it's a great place for us to start. So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? For literally centuries, this was a massive mystery. People knew that kids looked like their parents, but the actual rules of the game, totally unknown. How does biology decide which traits you get? To find the answer, we have to travel back in time, to a monastery garden of all places, way back in the 19th century. This is where one man, with a ton of patience and a brilliant mind, finally started to crack the code. Meet Gregor Mendel. Now, he was a monk, but he also had a background in science and math. And while other people had looked at heredity, Mendel did something that was totally revolutionary for his time. He counted. Yeah, he meticulously tracked traits in thousands and thousands of pea plants and used simple math to uncover the hidden laws of inheritance. So here's the experiment that changed everything. First, he crossed a pure tall plant with a pure short plant. Now, you might think you'd get medium plants, right? Nope. All of the offspring were tall. The short trait just vanished. But then, and this is the cool part, he bred those new tall plants with each other. And guess what? The short trait suddenly popped back up in the next generation. And this is where all that counting paid off. He saw it wasn't random at all. The short trait came back in a really specific, predictable ratio. For every 3 tall plants, there was 1 short plant. A perfect 3-to-1 split over and over again. That consistent pattern told Mendel there had to be an underlying rule at play. And this was his brilliant insight. He figured that for every trait, an organism gets 2 factors, one from each parent. The tallness factor, which we now call a dominant allele, always wins. It always shows up. But the shortness factor, a recessive allele, would stay hidden unless an organism got 2 copies of it. And that perfectly explained how the short plants could disappear for a generation and then reappear. Mendel's work was incredible, but you know what? He never actually knew what his factors were made of. He just knew they existed. It would take many more decades for science to zoom in and find the physical thing behind his rules, hidden deep inside ourselves. So yeah, that was the next giant puzzle for biology. If these factors are the instructions for life, where are they written down? And what language are they written in? And here's the answer we found: a gene. It turns out Mendel's factors are what we call genes. They're specific sections of that famous molecule, DNA. And you can think of each gene as a recipe, a set of instructions for building one specific thing, a protein. And it's those proteins that do all the work, determining everything from a plant's height to the shape of your earlobes. And to take that analogy one step further, if genes are the individual recipes, then chromosomes are the cookbooks. Our DNA isn't just one super long string. It's all neatly packaged into these structures called chromosomes, which live inside each of our cells. And because these genes are on different chromosomes or in different cookbooks, they get sorted and passed down independently of each other. So the gene for pea plant height is inherited totally separately from the gene for its seed color. And that's how you can get brand new combinations that you didn't even see in the parents, like a tall plant with wrinkled seeds. It's a genetic remix. This grid is called a Punnett square, and it's basically a tool that lets us predict what's going to happen in a genetic cross. And as you can see, when we look at 2 traits at once, like seed shape and seed color, things get really interesting. We don't just get the parental types back. The Punnett square shows us exactly how we can get all these new combinations, like round green seeds and wrinkled yellow seeds, all in predictable mathematical ratios, just like Mendel found. Okay, so we've got a handle on genes and chromosomes. Now let's use that knowledge to tackle a question everyone thinks about. How is our biological sex determined? Well, it all comes down to a very special pair of chromosomes. So, inside almost every cell in your body, you've got 46 chromosomes, and they're arranged in 23 pairs. The first 22 pairs carry the genes for pretty much everything else, from your hair color to how tall you are. But it's that last pair, pair number 23, that's the one we're interested in. And here's the difference. A biological female has a matched pair of these sex chromosomes, and we call them X chromosomes, so XX. A biological male has a mismatched pair, one regular-sized X chromosome and one much smaller Y chromosome, so XY. It's that simple. So think about what this means. A mother, who is XX, can only pass on an X chromosome to her child. That's all she has to give. The father, on the other hand, is XY, so he can pass on either an X or a Y. And that means it's actually the chromosome from the father that determines the biological sex of the child. If his sperm carries an X, it's a girl. If it carries a Y, it's a boy. All of this shuffling of genes that happens when a new life is created does something incredibly important. It creates variation. So let's zoom out for a second and look at why these little differences between us are absolutely essential for any species to survive. This quote from the source material really just nails it. The variety created by heredity is the raw material for evolution. It's what gives natural selection something to work with. I mean, think about it this way. If every single organism in a species were a perfect clone, they'd all have the exact same strengths and the exact same weaknesses. So a single new disease or a sudden change in climate like a heat wave could wipe them all out in one go. Variation makes sure that some individuals in a population will have the right combo of traits to survive and pass those winning traits on. It's like a survival toolkit. So, from a monk quietly counting peas in a garden to the intricate dance of chromosomes that makes each of us who we are, we've seen how the rules of heredity provide the blueprint for life. But that leaves us with one last big question. We know our genes give us the blueprint, connecting us to all of life's history, but where does their story end? And where does our own unique story truly begin?